The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to John. Lord, be in our minds, on our lips, and in our hearts. Now a man was ill, Lazarus, from Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. Mary was the one who had anointed the Lord with perfumed oil and dried his feet with her hair. It was her brother Lazarus who was ill. So the sisters sent word to Jesus saying, "Master, the one you love is ill." When Jesus heard this, he said, "This illness is not to end in death, but is for the glory of God, that the Son of God may be glorified through it." Now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. So when he heard that he was ill, he remained for 2 days in the place where he was. Then after this, he said to his disciples, "Let us go back to Judea." The disciples said to him, "Rabbi, the Jews were just trying to stone you, and you want to go back there?" Jesus answered, "Are there not 12 hours in a day? If one walks during the day, he does not stumble, because he sees the light of this world. But if one walks at night, he stumbles, because the light is not in him." He said this and then told them, "Our friend Lazarus is asleep, but I am going to awaken him." So the disciples said to him, "Master, if he is asleep, he will be saved." But Jesus was talking about his death, while they thought he meant ordinary sleep. So then Jesus said to them clearly, "Lazarus has died, and I am glad for you that I was not there, that you may believe. Let us go to him." So Thomas, called Didymus, said to the fellow disciples, "Let us also go to die with him." When Jesus arrived, he found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for about 4 days. Now Bethany was near Jerusalem, only about 2 miles away, and many of the Jews had come to Martha and Mary to comfort them about their brother. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went to meet him, but Mary sat at home. Martha said to Jesus, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But even now I know that whatever you ask of God, God will give you." Jesus said to her, "Your brother will rise." Martha said to him, "I know he will rise in the resurrection on the last day." Jesus told her, "I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me, even if he lives, will die. Whoever believes in me, even if he dies, will live. And everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this?" She said to him, "Yes, Lord, I have come to believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, the one who is coming into the world." When she had said this, she went and called her sister Mary secretly, saying, "The teacher is here and is asking for you." As soon as she heard this, she rose quickly and went to him. For Jesus had not yet come into the village, but was still where Martha had met him. So when the Jews who were with her in the house, comforting her, saw Mary get up quickly and go out, they followed her, presuming that she was going to the tomb to weep there. When Mary came to where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet and said to him, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come with her weeping, he became perturbed and deeply troubled, and said, "Where have you laid him?" They said to him, "Sir, come and see." Jesus wept. So the Jews said, "See how he loved him." But some of them said, "Could not the one who opened the eyes of the blind man have done something so that this man would not have died?" So Jesus, perturbed again, came to the tomb. It was a cave, and a stone lay across it. Jesus said, "Take away the stone." Martha, the dead man's sister, said to him, "Lord, by now there will be a stench. He has been dead for 4 days." Jesus said to her, "Did I not tell you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God?" So they took away the stone. And Jesus raised his eyes and said, "Father, I thank you for hearing me. I know that you always hear me, but because of the crowd here, I have said this, that they may believe that you sent me." And when he had said this, he cried out in a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out." The dead man came out, tied hand and foot with burial bands, and his face was wrapped in a cloth. So Jesus said to them, "Untie him and let him go." Now many of the Jews who had come to Mary and seen what he had done began to believe in him. The Gospel of the Lord. Two things caught my attention at the end of the reading, and I should apologize to our interpreter. I saw the long gospel, and so I started reading fast, and then I saw her moving fast. I hope she didn't sprain something. So I tried to slow down later. But other than that, I noticed these two things, that many of those who were with Mary and Martha, they began to believe. And that's us. That's us in that gospel. Jesus wants us to be those people who come to believe in him. In the Gospel of John, John wants us, as these stories are being told, he always says, "And many came to believe." Each time we hear these stories, we can open up our hearts and our faith can come alive, and we can begin to believe also. So let your faith come alive, ever increasing faith. The other thing I noticed was, even though Jesus gives life to Lazarus, like, how cool is that? I mean, he was dead for 4 days. His sister thought, "Oh, geez, Jesus, don't take the stone away. We's going to stink, you know." 4 days, he raises him from the dead. And that's pretty cool, but they weren't done yet. He was still bound hand and foot. He was still wrapped up. And so Jesus said, "Untie him." And so even though Jesus had done that great work, there was still a work for us to do. That work of untying him, of breaking every chain. It's the work of Lent. It's the work of the best Lent ever. We need to break every chain. We need to untie all those things that, even though we've been baptized, even though we're Christians, even though we're part of the community, we still need to be untied, and we need to do that for one another, and we need to allow people to help us to find our way to break every chain. I've been doing some devotions this Lent, and some of them have involved reading this wonderful writer, Thomas Merton, who brought back the whole Catholic side of the mystical tradition of the Catholic Church, that idea of becoming one with God, letting God come alive in us. And so part of what I've been studying was about silence. And he was talking about silence, and I was listening to another speaker recently too, and this other speaker was talking about words and how words today have no meaning. We're just like, CNN is just filling a 30-hour slot, or people are always talking, or there's always noise, there's always events going on. We just run from one practice to another, from one event to another. Our kids are so busy. I was just walking back, one woman said to me, "Oh, the kids in the play practice, their play going on at Powers, they're so busy." I'm like, "I know, my son's in there." And all they do is they're busy, busy, busy. There's no time for God. There's no place for silence. But what God does is he takes a word and he surrounds it in silence. And he gives that word meaning. Silence gives things meaning. Silence is where God creates things out of. And so we need to find in our life, silence priests are like power students. We're just working all the time, and we're trying to live a life of God, and we're just busy, running around. And it's like we didn't get to live that holy life because we're administrating all the time and working all the time and visiting all the time. Your lives are like that too. All our lives, we're so busy that we don't take that time to find silence. If you're in a museum and you're looking at a beautiful piece of art, what's around that art? Silence. There's silence in a museum, isn't it? Because you can't find beauty. You can't experience God's presence without that silence surrounding the beautiful art. If you go into the Adoration Chapel here where Jesus is present, what's in that chapel? Silence. Because God is always found in your silence. And we can find that silence in our lives. There's a story about a man who was walking down the street, and as he's walking, this other man comes galloping, just flying by on a horse at some crazy pace, just galloping by, and he says to the man on the horse, where are you going in such a hurry? And the man says, why do you ask me? Why don't you ask the horse? That's like our lives. It's like, where are you going in such a hurry? And you're like, why are you asking me? I'm just on this ride. I'm just going through it, you know. Why don't you ask something else? And it's like, get off the horse. That's what we need to do, don't we? And so when God creates the world, when God's going to do this great work of creation, what does he create it out of? Silence. He's just God in that perfect silence. And there's nothing at all. And God creates everything that's beautiful, everything that's good, all of creation, the stars and the sun and the moon, all the heavens. He creates the earth and all the rivers and all the trees and all that's beautiful. And he creates us, and he does it from that place of silence, from that nothing. And so John of the Cross, when he's talking about how do we find our way to God, how do we get to God, someone says, well, is it by this? And he says, no, nada. He's Spanish, so he says, nada. And they said, well, is it by holiness? He goes, nada. Is it by righteousness? Nada. Is it by the goods of heaven? Nada. Is it by the goods of earth? Nada. And nada, nada, nada. Nothing, nothing, nothing. The only way to God is just desire God. Nothing else. Find that place of silence in our life. I was doing I told you this before, this practice with my family. I was going to teach them how to just pray in silence for 5 minutes. And my kids were all young. I just had 2 at home. One was like 10 and one was 7. And Cindy was there too. And I explained to them how to do this and the skills to do it. And we started. And as soon as we started in my office, in my home, this monster truck pulled up right outside my house. And we were going to have 5 minutes of silence. And this truck is like... And I'm like, God, really? Don't I get any credit for being a priest? No, is the answer to that. And so 3 minutes this thing's going on, and the guy's locking the truck and unlocking it, beep, 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 that kind of thing, and blah, 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 blah. And oh, geez. And so 3 minutes is up, and the truck turns off, and I got 2 minutes left, and the furnace comes on, and my office is far away from the furnace, and so there's a motor under my office that comes on, and it's like really loud. It's a furnace from like out of Home Alone, that movie. It's like the evil furnace. It's like, and Stephen's sitting right on the furnace vent, and I'm like, oh, geez, and I'm thinking, God, let something good come of this. And that lasts the rest of the 5 minutes. And so finally, when it's all over, I said, let's just see what you guys got out of this. And I said, Cindy, what did you get? Thinking she was oldest, she'd have something good to say. And she probably said something good. I don't remember what she said because of what the boys said. Stephen was the next oldest. He was 10. I said, Stephen, did you get anything out of this? And he said, yeah. I found that I could be in perfect silence with noise going on all around me. Perfect silence with noise going on all around me. That's what God wants us to do. That's what Jesus does to begin Lent. He goes out into the desert. He goes out to be in the silence, to be among nothing. And so I found perfect silence. Isn't that a beautiful lesson for us during Lent? You can be in perfect silence with all the noise of your life, and we live on that horse galloping so fast. We live with so much noise. Nothing good was created out of noise. Nothing good was ever coming out of that chaos. Only, I don't know, wars and disease and stress and all that kind of stuff. Pollution comes out of all this noise. But God creates every good thing God does. He does out of the silence. And we can have that beautiful silence within us. We can have that. So I said to Christian, he's about 7 years old at the time. I'm like, hey, you get anything out of this little guy? And he's like, oh my God. It was like me and God in another dimension. It was just us together. And I'm like, wow. I was grumbling and complaining the whole time. And these guys were finding God and finding solitude and silence coming alive in their life. God wants that in our life as much as anything. Is your life based in silence? Or is your life based in noise and chaos? If you want that creative beauty in your life, if you want God in your life, you have to find that basis. You have to be able to live in silence with noise going on all around us. Jesus says today in the gospel, I am the resurrection. I am the life. I am the way. I am the truth. I am the life. I am the good shepherd. I am the light of the world. I am the gate, the door that you go through. I am the bread of life. I am the true vine. In one place in John, he just simply says, I am. And I was studying and praying and working through that, and I realized we have to personalize that. Because in John, that's not who Jesus is. Jesus isn't a door or a gate. He's not a piece of bread or something like that. Jesus is part of God, part of that divinity and Trinity. And so Jesus is those things to you. Jesus is the resurrection to you. Jesus is the life to you. It's personal. And so we need to personalize that and say, Jesus is my resurrection. Jesus is my life. Jesus is my way. Jesus is my truth. Jesus is my good shepherd. Jesus is my light. Can you do that? Can you personalize it and say that? Jesus is my bread of life. How about just that where it says I am? How about it's just Jesus is mine. Jesus came into the world for you. Jesus came just for each one of you. And he came to bring us alive, to bring us resurrection and life through whatever is going on in our life. Jesus came to raise us up. And we need that, don't we? And so in your life, wherever you need it, Jesus is my whatever I need, life and resurrection. Jesus is my all in all. Jesus is mine. And I find him in that silence, in that emptiness that becomes so full, doesn't it? It's an emptiness that has a fullness about it because God fills it up. This is our faith. Jesus for you. What a wonderful faith we have.